Have I got a treat for you today, ladies? Now, my favorite oil right now is myrrh. So this amazing, amazing oil is so delicious. It's one of the thicker oils. And so just a little tip from the beginning right here. I usually take some carrier oil and I rub it around the top of the bottle, and that helps to prevent the cap from sticking, because especially after it's been sitting for a while and you haven't opened it, it'll get really crusty and sometimes you can't get the lid off. So if you apply some olive oil or V6, coconut oil, whatever you like, to the top of the oil where the threads are and up in the plastic area, it will help so that your lid does not stick. So that's just a little tip that I do with my myrrh. Some people like to dilute the whole thing. I prefer to keep mine just as it is. So this is an oil that I have used many times for the births of my children. And what I did was, it was one of the key oils that we brought for our births. And I have 7 children, and 6 of those 7 children were able to experience oils right from the start. And what I would do is I would take the myrrh and rub it directly on the umbilical cord, even before the baby was clipped. How do I say that? And for me, I let the cord pulse until it was done before we did clipping of the cords. And so we applied it right to the umbilical cord. Then we also applied it to the umbilical cord stub once the baby was free. And also, I used it as a connection oil. So it's been anciently used as an oil to help with the mother-baby bond. And so I would apply it just to my stomach and to my chest and also to the baby. And so we would smell that while my babies were nursing. And to this day, it just brings back the sweetest, sweetest memories of nursing and cuddling with my tiny, tiny babies. And it's just such a pleasant oil to me because of that memory and that connection that I have with it. So I hadn't used it in a while. My youngest is 6 years old, and I decided to pull it out. I was once again reading the Healing Oils of the Bible book by Dr. David Stewart, and I came to the chapter on myrrh, and I was reading all about it. And of course, we all know that myrrh was one of the things that the 3 wise men brought to the baby Jesus. There was a reason for that. One of them I just talked about, for that mother-baby bond, but there are many, many other reasons for it. And I would really encourage you to look it up in your essential oil desk reference and see what it does. This oil is high in sesquiterpenes. It has about 60% sesquiterpenes, and so it helps with getting rid of the old stuff in your cells and reprogramming the misinformation that's in there. Now, because of that, I decided to use it in reference with the Esther story. So we know about Esther in the Bible and how she was taken to the king's palace. And many, many women at this time were gathered because the king wanted a new queen. And they gathered all these women and brought them to the palace, but they did not go into the king until after a year of being at the palace. Now, during that year, they went through a purification process, and part of that purification process was myrrh. In fact, a big part of that purification process was myrrh. They did have a washing part, and it was a purification washing, and that actually included hyssop and cedar wood in that washing. And then they had massages with olive oil and myrrh, and then they added in other sweet spices like cassia or cinnamon, cardamom. They had quite a list of different spices, and you'll find them in the Bible, that they added to the aloes. Oh my goodness, that one's heavenly. and they added these to the myrrh, and they purified these women's bodies and their minds and their emotions with all of these oils, this bathing and this anointing that went on for a full year. And so I was looking at the future and what I want for myself, and I decided I needed to let go of some of the past. So I brought out my myrrh, and the last 3 weeks I have been applying it to my chakras. Okay, so each of my chakras has received a drop of myrrh every single morning. And at first I didn't notice anything, right? And I do love the smell. So I've been just loving just smelling the myrrh, because it's one of the oils that kind of stays with you. And so I just love it, just the smell of it. But about a week ago, I started having an emotional release. And I was expecting this. I was planning on having this. They don't always happen at a convenient time. However, this was a convenient time. It was a Sunday. I was home with my family, and there was nothing going on, and I literally cried all day. After church, I came home and I just cried the rest of the day. And ugly cry, you guys, ugly cry. And I had memories being brought up into my mind of some trauma that happened last year. There was a death in my family, and it was a very traumatic thing. It was sudden, and so I had all these memories coming up in my mind of the things that happened right at the beginning of that trauma. And I was in a world of hurt at that point. And that day, I didn't actually put the connection together that the myrrh was what was bringing up these emotions. But the next day, as I was just pondering over what had just happened, because I hadn't cried like that for months. I've gotten misty when I think about it, but I hadn't really had that kind of emotion come out for a while. And there was no trigger either. There was nothing that would have triggered it. And so I was pondering over this and realized this is part of this process that I have started myself, applying the oil to my chakras and starting to heal the emotions that I've had. And so I started consciously working on processing through those emotions and letting them go. I got out the oil of release, and I really started processing through those things. I think sometimes when we have traumas at the time, we can't process. It's just such a shock that there's no processing going on. And so it's good to come back and revisit and be able to process through those things. And grief takes a long time to process through. But I was very grateful for that day of just emotional release, and then the next day where I just was consciously processing through all those emotions, and it was really quite sweet. And so since then, I've had a few smaller things that have been coming up to the surface, and since I'm now conscious of it, I'm really consciously working on processing through these emotions. And we all have things that happen that we've got to process through, and so I am so grateful for this oil right now. And I am excited for this next year, because I am going to be applying this every day for the next year. And then I'm going to be adding, after 6 months, I'm going to start adding the other oils that are mentioned in the Bible as sweet spices. And I am going to be using those as well to really finish this purification process. And there has been a side effect from this as well. So my purpose in this was to help release the past, process through my emotions, and go through this purification in my emotional state, right? That was my intention in this whole thing. But I've had a little bit of a side effect that I didn't expect. I wasn't even thinking about it, but when I looked at all my information about myrrh, I realized, well, of course this would happen. So one of your chakras is right here in the middle of your forehead, right? So I have had these deep furrows right here. I'm a little bit of a worrywart. And so the deep furrows right here in my forehead, if I go like this, you can see them a little bit. But you could see them 3 weeks ago when I wasn't furrowing my brows, okay? They were so deeply set, but just in massaging the myrrh, and then I've taken it and just kind of gone over all my wrinkles, right? All this area, but the furrows are so much less. Like seriously, I had no idea this would have such an awesome effect of starting to get rid of these furrows. And you guys, I'm 41, so furrows like that just don't go away, right? They're there to stay usually. And so I'm super excited about this, and I thought you would be too. So I am going to be continuing the process of applying this to my third eye and then my whole forehead. And just the last couple days since I've really noticed this change, I've started to put it along my laugh lines, because myrrh, you guys, this oil is amazing. So use it. It's awesome.